Hello and welcome back to artofdino.com, and it's time for a video on the Calumet dance and peace pipe, because I just ended up going down a rabbit hole a while back and I saved a bunch of things that I thought were really interesting to figure out and kind of get into the minds of the ancient people a little more and see how they dealt with problems, because in our modern day, they lie about war, they just do everything to destroy people, as we've seen, in any way possible, any way fathomable. But back in the day, they would people would settle their disagreements over smoking a peace pipe of some, I'm sure, delicious and amazing herb that helped the enlightening and peace process go smoothly. And to me, that seems like the best way to do everything. I've always been under the impression that I could walk up to anyone in this planet, in this country, in this planet, and smoke with them and have an amazing time and become a friend and hang out with someone, talk to anybody. I believe we are all good, and I do believe that we can coexist beautifully together, and that's what we were destined for. And if back in the day they weren't waging wars and just brutally murdering people because of disagreements, they were actually just smoking and getting along and solving things and, finding a normal and healthy and beautiful pathway forward whenever a discrepancy arose, then that is a beautiful thing. And I think we all can learn from that, especially the monsters out there. But you all are good. I love you all. We're all peace-loving pacifists and whatnot, unless we get taken and threatened. But we are, this is a great method. This is just an interesting kind of source from this book. And it's time to read some little inserts from it and some excerpts that I found while digging through the archives. So check some of this stuff out. The main book I'm going to use is by Louis Hennepin in 1699, I-699, called A New Discovery of a Vast Country in America, extending about 4,000 miles between New France and New Mexico, with a description of the Great Lakes, all this amazing stuff. So there is a lot of cool things, and I found a couple other books and that I'm going to also talk about, but just a few different readings. And first I want to start with this one, which was by Lesueur, The History of the Calumet. It says a couple different 8 bullet points about the Calumet, the dance and the pipe. So 1, that this dance was a true religious cult, not only among the Renards, but also among almost all the upper nations, that it was called the dance of the spirit, that one was said to be dancing not at all with the Calumet, but to be dancing in honor of the Calumet. In a word, the Calumet was the god of this nation. 2, that the words which are used in the song of this dance are an invocation of the spirit. 3, that when in the councils this calumet is smoked, any man whose wife was pregnant must refrain from smoking this calumet, inasmuch as his wife would not bring her fruit happily into the world, and it would undoubtedly perish. So, I wonder what they were smoking. Dear God. 4, that this dance is employed to summon the souls of those against whom they are going in war, and by these means to kill their enemies without question. Interesting. In order to conciliate foreign nations and enemies, and to make a good peace with them. 6, in order to obtain good weather and rain in accordance with the needs of the earth. 7, in order to have favorable winds for navigation. And 8, that finally it was a specific way to keep away every kind of evil and obtain every kind of good. I like that. And also keep in mind that these are the impressions given to us by the foreigners at the time, or by the French, I think this guy was at the time. And I think later on Calumet became a brand of tobacco or something. I'm not totally sure, but I think you can see it in the freezer in The Shining, that movie. So it's one of those things that actually is symbolic there. But the other thing I wanted to read was from that book. That one, what I just read, was from a different book, but this is page 71 from the book I showed you earlier, where there's a chapter called A Description of the Calumet, or Great Pipe. And again, if our people were actually legit, if our leaders and controllers of our world were actually legit, and they could just get together and do this, it would be nice. But they're all in a show, they're all a bunch of pieces of garbage. But here we go. This calumet is the most mysterious thing in the world among the savages of the continent of the Northern America, for it is used in all their important transactions. However, it is nothing else but a large tobacco pipe made of red, black, or white marble. The head is finely polished, and the quill, which is commonly 2.5 feet long, is made of a pretty strong reed or cane, adorned with feathers of all colors, interlaced with locks of women's hair. They tie it to 2 wings of the most curious birds they find, which makes their calumet not much unlike Mercury's wand, or that staff ambassadors did formerly carry when they went to treat of peace. They sheath what reed into the neck of birds they call huars, which are as big as our geese, and spotted with black and white, or else of a sort of ducks, who make their nests upon trees, through water, though water be their contrary element, and whose feathers are of many different colors. However, every nation adorns the calumet as they think fit, according to their own genius, in the birds they have in their country. A pipe, such as I have described it, is a pass and safe conduct amongst all the allies of the nation who has given it, and in all embassies. The ambassadors carry that calumet as the symbol of peace, which is always respected, for the savages are generally persuaded that a great misfortune would befall them if they violate the public faith of the calumet. Interesting how they always find a way to become the gods of the people they're subjugating. All their enterprises, declarations of war, or conclusions of peace, as well as all the rest of their ceremonies, are sealed, if I may be permitted to say so, with this calumet. They fill that pipe with the best tobacco they have, and then present it to those with whom they have concluded any great affair, and smoke out of the same after them. I had certainly perished in my voyage, had it not for this calumet or pipe, as the reader will observe in perusing the following account. Our 3 men, provided with this pipe as a pass, and very well armed, went to the little village of the savages, which was about 3 leagues from the place where we landed. But they found no body therein, for the savages, having heard that we had refused to land at the other village, thought we were enemies, and therefore had left their habitation. Our men, finding nobody in the care cabins, took some Indian corn and left instead of it some goods, to let them see that we were no robbers, nor their enemies. However, the savages, to the number of 20 men, armed with axes, small guns, bows, and a sort of club, which in their language they call breakheads, advanced near the place where we stood. Whereupon M. LaSalle, who wrote that other book that I wrote the list of, with 4 men very well armed, went toward them to speak with them, and desired them to come near us, for fear, as he said, a party of our men who were gone a-hunting should meet with them and kill them. They were persuaded to sit down at the foot of the eminence where we were posted, and M. LaSalle spoke to them all the while on the subject that the master of this voyage, which he had undertaken for their good and advantage, as he told them. This was only to amuse them till our 3 men returned, who, appearing with the calumet of peace, the savages made a great shout, and rose, and began to dance. We made them some excuse because of our men having taken some of their corn, and told them they had left the true value of it in goods, which they took so well that they sent immediately for more, and gave us the next day as much as we could conveniently carry in our canoes. They retired towards the evening, and M. LaSalle ordered some trees to be cut down, and laid across the way, to prevent any surprise from the savages. The next morning about 10 o'clock, the oldest of them came to us with their calumet of peace, and entertained us with some wild goats they had taken. We returned them our thanks, and presented them with some axes, knives, and several little toys for their wives, with which they were very much pleased. So a lot of interesting stuff. Even the fact that it's made of marble, I find to be kind of interesting. Were they repurposing this from an ancient pieces of civilization that they had found, or were they where did they learn this tradition? Where did it become the god? Where did they learn to grow tobacco at first? Sometimes natives have a tendency to even have dreams that tell them about plants, and I wonder if that's the origin, but I'm sure the origin of tobacco goes back pretty darn deep. So I also collected a few different parts from that same book that had calumet and the peace pipe related stuff. So enjoy some of the pictures. These are all scattered in the text. Nothing is going to match up except those first couple pages, but just want to read a couple paragraphs randomly that I think you might like. So this one says, I must speak here of the calumet, the most mysterious thing in the world. The scepters of our kings are not so much respected, for the savages have such a deference for this pipe that one may call it the god of peace and war and the arbiter of life and death. One with this calumet may venture amongst his enemies, and in the hottest engagement they lay down their arms before this sacred pipe. The Illinois presented me with one of them, which was very useful to us in our voyage. Their calumet of peace is different from the calumet of war. They make use of the former to seal their alliances and treaties, to travel with safety, and receive strangers, and the other is to proclaim war. So I guess war was going on for a long time. Unless war maybe had a different meaning back then, but I think it probably is pretty similar, pretty ancient, sadly. Kind of built into our system, unless it's just built into the resets, in a certain reset, which I would like to believe, but I'm sure war has just been ravaging Earth for a very long time, so No better way to make peace treaties than to get a little high on both sides and come to your senses. So I do like that. It goes on, it says, "It is made of a red stone like our marble. The head is like our common tobacco pipes, but larger, and is fixed to a hollow reed and hold for smoking. They adorn it with the feathers of several colors, and they call it the calumet of the sun, to whom they present it, especially when they want fair weather or rain, thinking that that planet can have no less respect for it than men have, and therefore they shall obtain their desires. They dare not wash themselves in rivers in the beginning of the summer, or taste the new fruit of trees before they have danced the calumet, which they do in the following manner." So very interesting. "This dance of the calumet is a solemn ceremony amongst the savages, which they perform upon important occasions, as to confirm an alliance or make peace with their neighbors. They use it also to entertain any nation that comes to visit them, and in this case we may consider it as their balls." Not sure what that means. "They perform it in winter time in their cabins and in the open field in the summer. They choose for that purpose a set place among trees to shelter themselves against the heat of the sun, and lay in the middle a large mat as a carpet to lay upon the god of the chief of the company, who gave the ball, for every one of his peculiar god, whom they call Manitoa. It is sometime a stone, a bird, a serpent, or anything else that they dream of in their sleep, for they think this Manitoa will supply their wants by fishing, hunting, and other enterprises. To the right of their Manitoa they place the calumet, their great deity, making round about it a kind of trophy with their arms out, their clubs, axes, bows, quivers, and arrows." See, I wonder if ancient-wise the natives encountered other beings that were smoking or using devices, or maybe they had machines that smoked and they witnessed these, like flying machines that smoked or something, and they witnessed these and kind of ended up linking it with gods, this maybe breathing in there thing. You don't know. I mean, I'm trying to just think outside the box and see what can happen here, because I think that's the way to do it. I mean, the perspectives that we read are all from kind of ancient perspectives, and now we have a chance to look at these kind of things and reinterpret them in a way where something might have been missed, intentionally left out, or just kind of altered through time. And so it's good. I just like looking at things fresh, and this is just an interesting way to get a grip, and try to envision. I wish we could just let these people in the modern world just smoke it out, dance it out. Imagine seeing all those goons just dancing and smoking. It'd be worth it. Let them all lose their inhibitions. Let them all be reality based instead of like their psychosis being the hallucinogen. I'd rather have them on some kind of wacky tobacco, see what they do. At least they'd be happy. They'd be positive. They'd be in check by the natives, because they'd have, I don't know, maybe the birds would trigger something, and Pelosi and some of these other beasts of our government. So another part says, "This preludium being over, he who is to begin the dance appears in the middle of the assembly, and having taken the calumet, presents it to the sun, as if he invited him to smoke," as if he wanted to invite the sun to smoke. I like that. Maybe they were taking solar rips back in the day with magnifying glasses. "Then he moves it into an infinite number of postures, sometimes laying it near the ground, then stretching its wings as if he would make it fly, and then he presents it to the spectators, who smoke with it one after another, dancing all the while. This is the first scene of this famous ball." Okay, so that makes sense. Now the ball is starting to make sense. That's their dance, and that's what they call it. That's nuts, or that's what the French call it. So everything's connected in such an interesting way with some ingredient missing. It goes on, "The second is a fight, with vocal and instrumental music." Awesome. "For they have a kind of drum which agrees pretty well with the voices. The person who dances with the calumet gives a signal to one of their warriors, who takes a bow and arrow with an axe from the trophy already mentioned, and fights the other, who defends himself with the calumet alone, both of them dancing all the while. The fight being over, he who holds the calumet makes a speech, wherein he gives an account of the battles he has fought and the prisoners he has taken, and then receives a gown or any other present from the chief of the ball. He gives then the calumet to another, who, having acted his part, gives it to another, and so of all the others, till the calumet returns to the captain, who presents it to the nation invited unto the feast, as a mark of their friendship and a confirmation of their alliance. I can't pretend to be so much master of their language as to judge of their songs, but methinks they are very witty." very interesting. And just think about that. They were binding agreements with art and with creativity and with like the spirit and honoring the spirit. So they weren't like putting their hand on a Bible that they don't believe in and lying right to the face of everyone, because no matter how many people see it, like they do on TV, and our leaders everywhere in every country, they're just lying through their teeth. These people were just doing a ceremony, a dance, a sacred ritual that they felt was bonded with God and the sun and the divinities and the deities and everyone around them that was magic and special. And just by that bond alone, they would obey, it seems like. I mean, I'm sure maybe they backtracked sometimes, but not nearly as much as they do now, and they're not nearly as corrupt. And this bond with God in the universe made them strong. It made their contracts amazing. It made their peace work. It made everything work because people were normal. They weren't egomaniacal freaks on social media just obsessed with themselves. They were obsessed with the making the whole process and making the group and the collective work and flourish and harmonize, and wanted to exist peacefully, and I'm sure raise their families, grow fruit, get creative, dance, smoke, do all the good things that are fun, enjoy nature, go out hunting, go out on a spiritual quest. All these different things they enjoyed, and they took and prided those over everything else, over gaining land, over gaining power, over gaining money, over doing all these things. And that I just can't help but think is right on the money. I love that. I love hearing the thoughts of the ancients, even when they're from the perspective of people who are kind of buttheads. It's just amazing because they are observing them in awe, and you get definitely a more pure, even though they're like older and they're from whatever types of completely different backgrounds than the people they're observing, they're still much better than the people observing them today would kind of be a lot of the time. They're just very pure kind of definitions and interesting. There's another part, I took a bunch of random clips. This one says, ground found about the corpse, which is their usual way of burying the dead. We found near the grave a calumet or pipe of war and a pot in which the savages had left some fat meat of wild bulls for the use of their dead friend during his voyage into the country of souls, which showeth that they believe their immortality. I like that. Another interesting passage in that book on page 160 says, I perceived all of a sudden about 2 p.m. no less than 50 canoes which were made of bark and manned with 120 savages who were stark naked and came down the river with an extraordinary swiftness to surprise the Miamis, Illinois, and Marhoans, their enemies. We threw away the broth which was preparing, and getting aboard as fast as we could, made towards them, crying out thrice, Mista Guche and Dayachez, which in the language of the Iroquois and Algonquins is as much to say, Comrades, we are men of wooden canoes, for so they call those that sail in great vessels. This had no effect, for the barbarians understood not what we said, so that they surrounded us immediately and began to let fly their arrows at a distance, till the eldest amongst them, perceiving that I had a calumet or pipe of peace in my hand, came up to us and prevented our being murdered by their warriors. These men, who are more brutal than those of the lower river, fell jumping out of their canoes, some upon land, others into the water, surrounding us on all sides with shrieks and outcries that were indeed very terrifying. 'Twas to no purpose to resist, but being but 3 to so great a number, one of them snatched the pipe of peace out of my hand as our canoe and theirs were fastened together on the bank of the river. We presented them with some small pieces of Martinico tobacco, because it was better than what they had. As they received it, the elders of them cried out, Miyahama, Miyahima, but what they meant by it we knew not. However, we made signs with our oars upon the sand that the Miamis, their enemies, whom they were in search of, had passed. And so, it's pretty awesome. These people are just like, they're living in a world, and can you imagine like what would have to happen to our world? Like, because at some point, remember, this world, Rome, all these cities were huge, they were massive, they were technologically amazing, beyond what we can fathom. And so at some point it had to get back some of the people in America, because I believe America was civilized all over the place and amazingly advanced at one point. And to get at one point from that to this, where people are just going around and tobacco and smoke, is there like a way of kind of like just experiencing that part of an herb and just the magic of an herb, and they're like using that to do all these amazing things. It's like the main form of currency, or like just communication between everyone. And it's just such an interesting world that portrays, a world where things like that are, meant so much, and people were still connected to the divine and the spirit and the magic of the world. And people, like they wouldn't just do things like the way we have people now, just killing people for no reason, no purpose. It's just it's way more barbaric than anything these barbarians have ever talked about, or these people who consider others that are beautiful to be barbarians have ever even fathomed. So it's really kind of an interesting contrast between the modern world and this other one, which seemed like to be in search of peace and happiness and wanted things to be good. And I'm sure, if they didn't have these kind of people coming onto their land, which they have been for however many generations, then they probably wouldn't even need these other pipes and stuff. But who knows? Very interesting stuff. I hope you all enjoyed this. Hope you all take something from it. Check out some of those other pages. Check out the book. I think you'll enjoy it. And just envision what it would be like if we could get all of our politicians and controllers to just do this. Just do a little dance, smoke, get everyone on the same page, make people happy, and be honest. Owe yourself, fear God, and do things right as a result of it. And not even fear, but just trust that that there's something more divine than what we know of here in our TikTok, Facebook, YouTube nonsense worlds. There is so much more out there just waiting to be discovered and realized and remembered by us all, to make our world better, make our world more beautiful, more peaceful, more harmonious, more creative, more art-filled, more everything. To save it, in other words. We got to. So, bless you all. Enjoy. Thanks.